video on the best of the worst board games ranked on the Board Game Geek, and ones that I thought should be recognized as not being that bad. Now I'd like to do 10 more games on that list, so putting those aside and kind of picking up where we left off. At 18,549, we have Who Shook Hook with Jake and Neverland Pirates. This is a really fun children's dexterity game. And I'm finding out that children's games are rated fairly low on Board Game Geek, and that's okay. But this one is really fun. You have the hook mechanism. It is a spin and move, but you have the dexterity with hook. And my kids have loved this game. I've gone through 3 kids. All have this game. All have loved this game. And the pieces are great. The components are good. It looks really fun. If you like to show it all, it appeals to that. This is one that should not be this low. And it's for dexterity games. It really works. At 18,459, we have Shark Island. This game was... Everybody was talking about it when it was pre-release, and then it came out and it bombed hard, and probably deservedly it did so. It used like this weird, instead of 21, you were playing like, I think the 23 for the shark bite. The sharks were spending coins to do things. A lot of it didn't make sense. Is it one of the worst games of all time? Absolutely not. Its cardinal sin was that some of the mechanisms didn't fit with the theme. The theme was really cool, by the way. It really had that kind of like Jaws feel on it. But the mechanisms didn't fit. The mechanisms were okay. It shouldn't have been like on the worst games of all time list. It wasn't that bad. But I think the hype on this one was so high that it just sunk. And that's why we find it so low. Should have been high. At 18,443, we have The Last Banquet. It's put out by Fantasy Flight Games. It's an okay game. It's a party game for large parties. I mean, you need like 14, 15 people to play this, and you have rolls, and you switch up and stuff. But for a large game of this set, the components are really fantastic. You really need a big group of people to play this, and I think everybody kind of needs to understand the rules to go through. So it had its problems, but one of the worst games of all time? No. And if you're looking for a game with great components, with great artwork that plays this many people, this is one I would definitely recommend for you. At 18,370, we have Flock, which was like the bird game before Wingspan. You know, do you want to be that guy? Well, Flock is an okay game. It was a little bit boring. It didn't really have the flow of the worker placement, and it really had one strategy that you could kind of utilize through the game. It in no way, shape, or form should be one of the worst games of all time. It had great components. The game was straightforward, but it worked. And, you know, maybe it wasn't something that jumped off the page at you, but it was definitely mediocre. I mean, it definitely wasn't the worst game you ever played. If you like birds and you like the kind of worker placement of that, having, you know, you with the efficiency of your turns, Flock is something you can find very cheap and one that I would recommend to you to check out. And the components, buy this game for the components and use those components in other games. They're wonderful. Fantastic. At 18,338 is Miskatonic School of Girls. Now, this was like an early Kickstarter I kind of missed. I got the game, I played it, people didn't really like it. It's one of those games where you want to get rid of cards, and it has like this deck building atmosphere to it. It's got some take that to it, and it stars all girls from a school of girls and Miskatonic, right? It's got that Arkham horror theme to it. I don't hate this game. I don't understand the hate for this game. Is it a fantastic game? No. It reminds me of that movie The Faculty, if you ever saw that from like, I think the 90s with Josh Hartnett, where the teachers were bad guys and the kids were all battling against them. I like the theme. I like what it was going for. It has all girls to play with my daughter. It's going to take that into it. And you know, it's got some randomness to it, but this did not bother me. Why? This is one of those games where I think the hype was above where it landed, so it fell a little bit further than it should. No way it should be this far down on the list. Try this one out. Try this one out. 18,270 is Jailbreakers. This was kind of a dice rolling game about trying to break out of a jail. I kickstarted this one. I expected a little bit more from it, and I think this game didn't have wide distribution, which may be why it's down so low. I thought it was a fine game. It was okay. It wasn't a keeper to me, but it was definitely mediocre, but it wasn't the worst thing on this list, and I don't know why it's down so low. It was kind of straightforward. I think the artwork is fantastic, and I thought it held up fine, so Jailbreakers. 18,199 is Walking Dead, the card game. This is a fine card game about trying to get the lowest numbers. I liked it, trying to hit it up. The theme didn't fit what you were doing. I think that's why it was down so low. But overall, I thought it worked fine. It wasn't something that I hated at all. I wanted to check out. At 17,957 is Lineup. This is one of those games where you want to get the people lined up, and they have like subtle differences, and you're looking at 3 or 4 that pretty much the same card, and you have to find the one that's different. That's what Lineup is about. It's a fun party game. It's one I've actually kept, and I like the way it should be this low. At 17,908, we have Among Us. This is a cooperative game that can have a traitor about aliens coming down, and you're trying to stop the alien invasion. Very cool theme, very cool components. The major issue with this game was the printing errors that it had, and for some reason, it just didn't click with gamers, or didn't get enough publicity, or didn't get out there enough. This is actually a very solid game, and even though I put it on my Purge list, which I kind of regret doing, but that was mostly due to printing errors. If this was re-released with second edition, I don't even think they need to upgrade the components. Just make sure those errors aren't there. This would be a total buy for me. And even those errors, you can play the game with those errors, and you can get by with it okay. Among Us, this is a huge surprise that it would be down this low. At 17793, we have Wreckage by Fantasy Flight Games. And this is like the opposite of miniature games. So you have all these miniatures and beautiful looking things. This was back then when we just had tiles and we were happy with our tiles. And this is a combat racing game, kind of like Twisted Metal for the PlayStation, where you're driving around and you're shooting and firing up everybody. And you actually have to measure out your distance, and you're upgrading your guns and etc. It doesn't make a lot of sense that you're upgrading during the fight, but you just kind of have to roll with it for game purposes. Wreckage is a really fun game. If you're into car combat and you don't want to spend a whole bunch of money, this is one of the go-to car combat budget titles that I would recommend for somebody. Good rule set, lots of fun, and everything is cheaply done because there's no miniatures or cardboard. Why is this so low? I don't know. It's a Fantasy Flight game too. Lots of surprises on this list. So that's our list. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate you guys being with us. I hope you enjoyed going through some of the worst games. Which ones weren't that bad? And you can comment below and tell me which ones that you liked. Please like and subscribe to the channel, and we appreciate you being with us today.